Alright, cinephiles, this week we bring you a review of a movie that per excellence gives us war, tragedy and issues that concern us today, such as racial divisions, all together with a good soundtrack. The movie we will talk about is The Last of the Mohicans, an adaptation of the book of the same name written by James Fenimore Cooper, and we will see if it's worthy of the golden popcorn at the end of this review. So let's start with it. The film tells the story of Hawkeye, a white man adopted by the Mohicans, who must rescue Cora Monroe and Alice Monroe, the daughter of a colonel being pursued by the Huron tribe during a time of military conflict.
Oh, hi, fellow cinephiles! We are going to point out two of the main romantic elements of The Last of the Mohicans, the movie, or the book, in the American way. First we have bonding. As we know from romanticism, feelings and emotions are way relevant than rational thinking. Most of the characters act by their heart, portraying socially and unlikely friendships and romances, despite racial differences, a very American issue. As we see from Uncas and Cora, or Hawkeye, Chinchacook and Uncas, who establish some sort of symbolic family. The characters try to stay together despite all odds, social imposed norms, and prejudices. Then we have another element that is more clear, and is nature. There is a strong communion with nature in this movie and book, making nature an obstacle or an advantage from what it can provide. For example, Hayward travels and stumbles on natural fields, while Magua takes advantage of his cluelessness, hiding in nature. And also, I want to add that, on top of everything, nature is one of the biggest and deeper conflicts that white people, in this case Americans, have with Native Americans.
Hey, and maybe you're asking yourself, myself, and how is the movie related to history? And I am here to tell you that. The Last of the Mohicans adapts one of the greatest historical events, such as the Franco-Indian War of 1757. When France and Great Britain were fighting the power of the colonies in North America, which was named after the 7 Years' War, and I know you know it because it's very, very famous. And the movie shows how Native Americans supported the French army, with the purpose of achieving the victory in one of the worst and bloodiest battles fought on American soil. But the director was able to give an elegant and respectful style with the drama. A big drama, of course, that left many dead combatants on both sides, and adequately shows the traditions of the first Native American inhabitants of what is now known as the United States. That is, it happens in the years of the American Civil War, also giving space to the romance between the white-blooded son of a Mohicans and the daughter of an army general, all while the confrontation between the French and English armies living its most dramatic days, and the presence of the Huron tribe and the hatred of one of its most important members of the English will be totally decisive in the dramatic outcome of the story. And this passionate epic about the bloody and ruthless colonial era of the United States shows too the presence of big elements typical of the era of Romanticism among these bloody and painful corridors that characterized the United States at the end of 18th century.
How can we not mention the author of this story, who inspired so many directors and readers alike? That is James Fenimore Cooper, who started writing thanks to his wife, who challenged him to write a better book than the ones she used to read. As he didn't want to be less, he ended up writing being his first book, Precaution, an inspiration of a classic of classics, Persuasion, by Jane Austen. We don't know if he was able to beat his wife to the bed, but we do know that the book was well received in the United States and England. James Cooper, since he was a child, was a rebel without a cause, who gave him problems with his rich landowner parents. He criticized his teachers and private schools he attended, and when he went to Yale University at the age of 13, he was expelled for making commotion in class. No doubt, his determined, audacious, and independent temper helped him to create Americans' heroic characters with certain similarities and that gave way to romantic ideas that will be presented in his work later on. As we have been mentioning, the movie is based on James Cooper's book. But how similar is the mood to the book? We could say not so much, since its director Michael Mann gave a romantic approach to the story, focusing more on the relationship between Hawkeye and Cora. What's more, in the book, Duncan, who proposes to Cora, ends up being the fiancé of Alice, Cora's sister. Not to mention that Cora was really in love with Uncas, the stepbrother of Hawkeye, and both Uncas and Cora have a fatal ending. This radical change between the characters' relationships is due to the fact that the 1992 film is a Hollywood readaptation of the 1936, where they wanted to add this love triangle. For the characters, there were some hits and misses in regard to the book. Hawkeye, being the main character, obviously had to be played by a young actor with a worked physical appearance and charisma, who shows passion and vigor, but again, he has nothing to do with the Hawkeye of the book, who is a middle-aged man with a serious and irritating temper. Besides being solitary, he stood out for being rough and proud, with his ideals very clear, and from occasions humble and modest, being a mixture of the wild and the civilized. Cora, however, got similar personalities in the book, not to mention that she was mixed race and not a white woman from England, as shown in the movie. But anyway, they kept the determination that highlights her and her ability to be a strong and determined woman, very committed to her values and beliefs. Well, we also have two films that share common themes with our main film. The first one is Pocahontas. Yeah, this film contains themes such as the appreciation of nature and the search for new lands, trying to coexist with differences that in the end up giving a new origin to humans. The second one is The Patriot, similar not only because of its themes that deal with the sense of freedom and belonging, but also because it is set after the French-Indian War, so it will be a quite interesting historical continuation, not to mention the fact that Mel Gibson participates in it.
I think it's a remarkable historical adventure film and epic cinema that has excellent photography of places and in accordance with the historical context that is narrated. The soundtrack is wonderful, so that with a simple bit of music you can expect to be in for a good surprise. That's why it won an Oscar for Red Sound. On the other hand, the film manages to combine adventure and romance in sequences with an eminently classic aroma. I think all the sequences in the film from the beginning keep the illusion alive. Moments of action, full of tension, scenes of absolute romanticism, and a totally memorable ending. And finally, I think the performances are very successful, so in conclusion, I will totally recommend this piece of beauty and courage, which will move you with its heroic, moving and tragic story that is worth seeing not only for the interests of each person, but for knowing some colonial history, territorial wars, Native American cultures and customs.
Well, I wouldn't give it the golden popcorn because the story was not well told for me. It goes very slow and there are scenes that lack consistency. Although the soundtrack is a plus, I feel they achieved to give that heroic emotion. So I would not recommend it if I wanted a deeper analysis of the man versus man conflict, because it does not develop that theme very much. But if you just want an epic epic war movie, that works for me.
Would I recommend the movie? No, not really. For me, it was boring, very slow, and it didn't had like a clear climax or a moment in the movie that got me like, wow, oh my god, this is the climax and things are going to get a bit clearer and we're going to have a resolution. So I got a little confused and bored by the movie. It wasn't my cup of tea. See what I did there? Anyway, but I have to say, in conclusion, that it has its strong points and positive points that involve racial issues portrayed by the friendship of, in this case, Hawkeye, a white man, and Chingachgook, a Native American, who, despite their differences, they bond and they get along well. And also, I have to say that it portrays another important issue for some people, that is interracial romances and relationships. So yeah, I mean, personally, I didn't like the movie, but if you're really interested in socio-politic, maybe, context of movies and stuff, you're going to enjoy the movie.
Well, that's all for today, guys. And tell us, will you recommend this movie? Do you think it deserves the Golden Popcorn? See you in the next video. Bye!